Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Caregiving Gen X Style. I'm Steve Mullen.
And I'm Jennifer Mullen.
If your loved one is in some type of senior living facility, be it a nursing home, skilled nursing, assisted living, or even independent living, at some point or another, you're going to need to deal with the administration. In this episode, we're going to talk with an experienced and award-winning administrator who will give us some pointers. But first, Jennifer, how's your mom?
Well,
would
you really like to know how my mom is?
I would.
Okay. She is doing so well, in fact, that, as you know, before we turn the microphones on for this episode, we spent about 5 minutes talking about what I would say for How's Your Mom? Because I don't really have any particular stories of note.
You were in the good old days.
I count that as a good thing. We are definitely in the good old days right now. I'm going to knock wood on the dining room table. No, she's doing great. It's been, we talked about this, I think, in the last episode. It's, there's been some winter weather moving through. It's been incredibly cold.
Insanely cold.
Very cold. Of course, the cold has Mom a little worried about our daughter who does walk from her apartment to the hospital where she's a nurse. So I know she's been very focused on that with Hannah. But, generally speaking, she's been great. We really haven't been able to get her out of the house very much lately because it is ridiculously cold. I did get her out for a doctor's appointment just last week, actually, and she got a good bill of health. But originally I had thought it was later in the afternoon and I thought, maybe we'll go grab some dinner somewhere afterwards. But we were so freezing. We got her back home and in a nice warm nightgown and settled back in. So, she's been doing her exercises to try to get some activity in her day. And frankly, the main thing we have to worry about with that is she's kind of all or nothing with exercise sometimes. So, she'll get on a roll where she starts to do some exercising and she'll do too much in one day. And then she sort of pays the price for that with the rheumatoid arthritis. So, then we kind of have to tell her to back off and rest a little bit. So that's a little bit of a moving target, trying to find the right balance with that. But overall, she's doing great. So I couldn't be more pleased with that report
Well,
tonight.
good.
So how about you? How's your mom, Steve?
She's doing well, too. I mean, we are also in the good old days. So one thing in her assisted living, she's been having some issues with the thermostat. Frankly, I'm not sure it's actually an issue, but I will say the heating and air conditioning is a little wonky there. It's an older building, and the heating and air conditioning unit's in one room. It's in the living room, and then sometimes the bedroom is either cold or hot or something. And they offered to try to fix this by installing a smart thermostat.
Oh, boy. Do we think this is a good idea?
I was not in favor of it at first.
Because we've talked about how your mom turns the lights on and off in our house.
I know. And I will say, Jennifer said, maybe you should just go ahead and do it.
Did I?
You
oh, my
did.
gosh. Do
What
we
were
have
you
that
thinking?
recorded somewhere? Can you actually prove that I said that?
No, I cannot prove it. But I also talked to my brother, and he said, no, it'll be fine. Do you think she can handle it? I said, no, I don't really think so. But we went ahead and did it.
That's easy for us to say because you're the one who's going to be dealing with it. But
exactly.
Go ahead.
Exactly. So it was just installed as of the time of this recording yesterday. So we have not really found out how much of a problem it's going to cause. It may cause no problem at all. The nice thing about it, when she gets into bed in the evening and just watches television, because she's wheelchair bound, she can't easily get out and fix the thermostat. Right. So this will allow her to do that. She can talk to her Alexa and say, turn the thermostat up 1 degree, turn the thermostat down 1 degree, or something like that. Or she'll end up turning it down 10 degrees and be freezing to death.
Thankfully, we don't have a smart thermostat that somehow could get mixed up with her smart thermostat,
because
then it would be 85 degrees in our house at all times.
Yes, it's true. It's true. So we're going to see how that works out. The plan for tomorrow when I go visit her is to write up detailed instructions of what she can say to this thing to get it to do what she wants.
All right. So everyone stay tuned because I feel like there is going to be a future story about smart thermostat.
Sure. And just one more little quick thing. So she is the guinea pig. It's like a test project they're doing there. The maintenance guy that was in there yesterday helping me get everything set up, he said, we plan to eventually replace all of the thermostats with smart thermostats, but this is the first one. So we're going to see how it goes.
Okay. I'm not sure if your mom is the best guinea pig for that, but I don't know. On the flip side,
mentally she's pretty with it.
She is.
And not everybody has the Alexas or the Google whatever the heck they are. But you could still set it and do all kinds of different stuff with it. So we're going to see how this goes.
Let's also just point out, I have to say this, right? Yet another point to make about this great place that she lives in, right? That they're thinking about thermostats and how to make things easier for their residents. And, if it works in this apartment, they're going to install it in all of them, et cetera, et cetera.
These things aren't cheap. I mean, they're not ridiculously expensive, but they're not exactly cheap either.
That would not have happened in the last facility where she lived.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, so.
All right, so let's get into the episode. Depending on the facility and the situation you're dealing with, interacting with the administration in a senior living facility can be either smooth or it can be a knockdown, drag-out fight. Our guest for this episode can hopefully help us to ensure it's the former and not the latter.
That's right. Our guest is Denise Chadwick Wright. She is the CEO of Birmingham Green, a senior living facility in Manassas, Virginia, which is in the northern part of our state. She was recently recognized as one of the state's top business leaders, and she's an influential voice in the healthcare sector. So, Denise, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We are really excited to have you here with us. But before we dig into the meat of this episode, how are your parents, Denise?
Well, I'm fortunate to still have both of my parents here. So my mother is 85 years young and my father 86 years young. They're both still living independently in their home in the city of Philadelphia, which is where I was born and raised. So they're active. My father goes to the gym at least 4 days out of the week.
Wow.
And my mother, they both still drive. And my mother, she goes to senior sitters from time to time. She loves to still shop. So far, they're aging well. They have challenges from time to time. So my father does have hearing loss, but he's able to function well with hearing aids. But they're doing well overall.
Yeah, you said it. You are very fortunate. That's wonderful.
That's fantastic.
All right. So before we really dive into the nitty-gritty of dealing with administrators, can you tell us a little bit about Birmingham Green?
Yes. So Birmingham Green, we're located on 54 acres of land in Prince William County, Manassas, Virginia. And at Birmingham Green, we provide nursing facility services. We're certified to provide both Medicare and Medicaid services in our 180-bed nursing home. And we also have 2 assisted living buildings on our property. Our one building, Willow Oaks, is 100% auxiliary grant funded, which is similar to Medicaid for assisted living in the state of Virginia. And then we have a smaller, 30-bed operating assisted living facility, the district home, which is the original building when Birmingham Green was established in 1927.
Wow. Okay. That is quite the facility. So tell us a little bit about yourself too, Denise, sort of how you got to be where you are and doing what you're doing now.
Certainly. So my background entails 32 years of leadership service in the senior industry. I've started in Pennsylvania as a licensed nursing home administrator. I've worked in the states of Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, where we are. I also have received a license in a few other locations. So I worked in nursing homes, assisted livings, post-acute rehab settings. I have a MBA with a concentration in healthcare administration. I've done just about everything during my early years, assisted living in all departments, which served me well as far as having a foundation for what's needed to be an administrator.
Yeah, I was just going to say, foundation was actually the word that came to my mind. Certainly a solid foundation, because this is not really an easy, I think, business career to be in. It's very complex, actually. So, as administrator, let's start here. What is the hardest part of dealing with the family members of your residents?
Not specifically at Birmingham Green, but in general, in my experience, the hardest part will be the emotional piece. So most of the time what I've seen is when family members and residents, when they make a decision, whether they were forced into the decision or they just did it themselves willingly, it's the emotional stressors that come with that. So if it's the family member, sometimes you may be working with someone that is dealing with grief or guilt, as well as the resident, the loss of independence. And so dealing with that and expectations, because in our setting, we have adequate staffing levels, I will say that, but some people may expect one-on-one services. So I think it's just really important to be clear, have clear expectations. So having those conversations in the beginning, if possible, is always great to have people come out beforehand, have a tour, a meet and greet to meet the staff, perhaps even have a meal to get familiar with the setting, because it's an important decision and it's really challenging when residents come from a house setting to, it could be a room or a smaller apartment style setting. So that's, I would say, one of the biggest challenges.
Yeah, I was thinking, about what you're saying about the, sort of the emotional piece of all this. That's really interesting to me because, when we talk about your foundation and what you're doing now, obviously a huge part of your foundation is learning the complex part of healthcare, right? But the thing that's it's not really taught, you just have to learn it along the way, is all of that emotional stuff that goes along with people moving into assisted living facilities or other types of facilities. That's a tough thing, and I would imagine that it's something that improves with experience. You have to just sort of do it and live it through multiple scenarios as clearly you have over your career, and then it becomes, I'm sure, second nature in a lot of ways.
Well, I would say there's always a first time. So there's always a first time with anything. But yes, I would say with experience, it is helpful working with families during this important time in their lives, this change. And so, and then sometimes when you have new move-ins, there's diverse family dynamics. Sometimes it's not identified who is going to be the key point of contact, the power of attorney, the person responsible for their parent, their loved one. So depending on the family dynamics, that can be a challenge as well.
Yeah, definitely. It is really fascinating to me. It's a lot of the soft skills that you've developed as an administrator to identify and understand things like family dynamics. Again, maybe not something that's taught so much, but just something that you learn through experience. And, I hear what you're saying. Sometimes you're going to be presented with a situation maybe you haven't encountered before. And I'm sure that, that's a challenge as an administrator to a little bit think on the fly and figure out how you're gonna address the situation that's presented to you.
Jennifer's over here geeking out a little bit. She's in a management position at her job.
Yeah.
And she's thinking soft skills. She's thinking, how do you manage people? How do you do this? How do you do that? But so we have had a lot of experience with different types of administrators. So as all of our listeners know, my mother's in assisted living. At her previous assisted living, they had about 10 different executive directors in 2.5 years, which is, I feel, utterly insane. Each one of them had their own personalities. So you, as a family member, you had to learn how to deal with every single one of them. So she's now living in a different assisted living facility. It has its own set of administrators. We work really well with them. But what are the personality traits that you look for when you hire management for your facilities?
We look for traits that are in alignment with our values of passion, inclusiveness, and stewardship. Those values, you can't teach those. And also, for us at Birmingham Green, we have a management leadership program. And so the team, we came up with, how do we know that people are right for our setting and that people are living our values? So we look at, are they demonstrating behaviors of I learn, I own, I energize, I engage, and include? So all that being said, of course, we have a job description with requirements. So we look at communication as important, leadership experience, financial experience, being able to adapt, and their financial acumen are all important. And we utilize a tool, it's a behavioral assessment, the predictive index, that assists us with identifying if people are a good match. And then it also has a development component to it. And we share it with the person if they're onboarded with us to look at how they could be developed, opportunities, strengths, and weaknesses that we can work on with them. So those are some of the tools we have in place at Birmingham Green to assist us with that.
Yeah, I think so. To me, what I hear, what that demonstrates to me is you are definitely taking it very seriously when it comes to finding people who are the right fit to deal with, a very specific stage in people's lives. It does need to be handled with care, and it is, again, I know we touched on this earlier, it sometimes is the soft skills that need to be identified as much as it is, does someone know how to assist with, the paperwork to help with, Medicare, Medicaid, whatever that might be. So I definitely can appreciate that approach, certainly. So I do want to talk for just a minute about this. We know that family members sometimes can be a little bit unreasonable.
That would be me.
Steve's across the table from me. I know you can't see him, Denise, but he's across the table raising his hand right now. In reality, Steve probably has crossed that line at some point.
I absolutely have.
In reality, my brother and I, I'm sure, have, even though mom, Gagi is not in assisted living, but,
but she's been in skilled nursing.
She's been in skilled nursing hospital.
I mean, yeah, sure.
We probably all cross the line because we are there to advocate, and we've had episodes about this where we've advocated for our loved ones. But I'm really curious to hear from your side, Denise, from the administrator side, from the staff side, when you have a family member who, in all reality, probably is being a little unreasonable with something, how do you diffuse that type of situation? How do you handle that?
Well, I would say it's important to be calm and to listen. We discuss acknowledgement of feelings, so acknowledging the person, the family member's concerns, and listening, active listening. Also, we look at not making assumptions. So having that time, if the person is open, to sit down, meet with them, to go over what their concerns are, to come up with, if someone's really frustrated, I would say, or being disrespectful, because that has and does happen, it's important to set clear boundaries, mutual respect on both levels. And if that doesn't work, then it's okay to say, we're going to take a break, or we need to end this meeting. And once everyone calms down, we could come back together, and giving each other space to come back and think about what concerns are. But I think for the most part, when people feel that they're being heard and listened to, and mutual respect, I believe that has worked well with hearing what the concerns are and being open and honest with what can be done or provided and what can't.
And I think that's really what most people want, is to be heard and to at least feel like the facility is going to try to do something about it, whatever it is, unless it's a completely unreasonable request. Like you had said, there are some people that come in and I think they really don't understand what assisted living is or what a nursing home is or what have you. But let's look at the other side of the coin. So we as family members sometimes feel like administrators are being a little unreasonable or unfair to our family members. And once again, this could be just expectations on our side because we've discussed this before. Sometimes we just turn into mama bear or papa bear and the claws come out because we don't feel like our family member is being treated properly. So how do you recommend we deal with that situation when we feel like the other side is not being reasonable?
I would recommend, similarly to what I've shared, definitely staying calm, gathering your thoughts, requesting a meeting, and being specific with what the situation and concerns are, and focusing on the solution, asking questions as well, not assuming, and expressing your concerns respectfully. It's also important to document the conversation as far as key points, so you have it for your notes. And if necessary, you can involve the local ombudsman if you feel that you need to have someone else there that's an advocate for the resident. That is, if that does not work, you request a meeting and there's no follow-up, then I would, definitely say when you contact the ombudsman, typically they're going to follow up on that concern. I had a situation with a friend a couple years ago, was in a short-term skilled nursing setting. She had a hip replacement and she was frantic because she was in an urban location and it was a rodent problem, and she was just terrified. And so she requested, assistance, and no assistance was provided. And it just so happened that I knew someone that was the quality for that organization in a different region, but I was able to reach out to them because I also reached out to the administrator and left a message. And then luckily I was able to reach out to someone who I knew that did quality. I was on a committee with them, and then they followed up. And then she shared how the administrator and people started coming in. It was an unfortunate situation. It did get resolved, but it was unfortunate that it had to evolve.
So I think the lesson here is that you are a good friend to have.
Yeah.
It's good to have Denise around. But, something you mentioned, and this is something that Jennifer and I have talked about, not on the podcast necessarily, but it's really important to have things in writing. And yes. I think to have a paper trail. And if you're going to communicate with something very serious, for instance, last year in the spring, we had some pretty serious stuff going on with my mother in her former assisted living, which did lead to her moving out. But I wanted to make sure, and Jennifer actually recommended this strongly. She said, make sure you send emails. You don't necessarily leave voicemails. If you send an email, you have a paper trail. And that way that, you can say, I contacted you on this date. Here's what I said. And that's kind of important.
Yes, I agree. It's very important because I would say in just about every setting, facilities have, whether they call it concern or grievance logs. And typically as a standard, when you receive concerns, you try to follow up no less than 5 days, especially if it's something you receive in writing, responding in writing as well. But I would agree that, yes, it's important to have your concerns documented.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about what you said, and that was kind of, part of what our next question really was going to be to you, as a family member, if you feel like you're not getting the response you need, like at what point is it appropriate to maybe go over someone's head, right? No one really wants to be that person. But what I heard you say, though, is that, if you are advocating for your loved one and you do feel like you are not getting what you should be getting, that there are potentially multiple avenues for you to go through to try to get the situation resolved.
And I guess in this particular instance, going over an executive director's head would be going to you, right?
Well, in my organization, yes. In my organization, the administrator reports to a chief operating officer position, and then that chief operating officer position reports to me. However, we share with our team. We're out and available. Our contact information is available. We engage with family members throughout our day, and we have special events at minimal quarterly to get to know our family members. But I would say yes, communicating with someone above us, hopefully it would be able to be resolved internally before going external to other sources. But in long-term care, the nursing home industry specifically is highly regulated. It's the next highly regulated industry next to nuclear medicine.
Wow.
When you look at all the regulations for a nursing home setting, although assisted living isn't quite as regulated, it is on the way there. And it's, best practices and things that are in place. So there are the agencies, if it was necessary, to contact the licensure agency if someone isn't responding. But I would say, when do you determine you need to do that? It depends. Also, you look at the urgency and the need. So what is happening with your loved one and the person that you're trying to share that concern with that they're not responding to? So if it's something such as life-threatening or a wound, you want a response right away.
Mm-hmm.
So if the administrator isn't available, it's always someone that's in charge of the building, whether it's the director of nursing, nursing supervisor, and they should be able to address those concerns.
Well, it's definitely good to know that, there are, multiple avenues to consider. I think we all agree. We hope it never gets to that point, but, if you have to, you have to.
And fortunately, it sounds like you have a setup there where it's good that you have multiple people you can go talk to. Unfortunately, with our experience with assisted living, that's not always the case. It's unfortunate. I know I really haven't had any problems where my mother lives now. It's fantastic. I will tell them to their face, I am their biggest fan. But the previous place, not so much. And once you get past the executive director, you're going to corporate, and a lot of times they just don't answer your phone calls. It's just unfortunate. It's a different facility to facility to facility to facility problem.
Yes.
But one hopes that it's more set up like what you're talking about, where you can go to the ombudsman, or you can go to the CO, or you can go to Denise. But finally, what is your best tip for family members who are dealing with moving their loved ones into a facility for the first time, no matter what kind of facility it is, and want to get off on the right foot with management?
I would say it's important to, if they don't offer meet and greets, to set up a time to meet with the administrator, director of nursing, or even the unit manager. Some facilities do pre-meetings. Some facilities wait, whether it's a few days or a week, to have a meeting, whether it's a individual service plan meeting or a care plan meeting. But I think it's really good to do that sooner versus later, so that way people understand your loved one, their preferences, so that that information could be in place, as well as people being aware that, you're putting your pride and joy, your valuable possession in their hands to care for, and you're there to, partner and collaborate with them. But I would definitely, if you have time to do tours or communicate beforehand, I would highly recommend that for the person. But communicating with administration, a meeting is ideal. And sometimes we always think about the administrator, but in my experience, I've seen it's important to know the business office person, so to understand
absolutely
the bills and insurance, things of that nature, how that works, what's needed, the social worker. So it's important to really meet with the team.
It seems like it would be, it's important to find out, okay, if you have a problem with your with the bill, go to this person. If you have a problem with medications, go to this person. If there's a problem with whatever, go to this person. Dining room.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a really good idea.
Yeah, I mean, right? I mean, on the one hand, it sounds like kind of funny, but I do think about dining, right?
Food's a big thing. We know this.
It's a big thing, and I do think that's one of the things that I remember we were so impressed by at the facility where your mom is now. The lunch where, Denise, you won't know this story unless you listened to an episode a long time ago, but I am the one who introduced my mother-in-law to her now
to all of her BFFs, yes,
at the facility where she is now, by taking her up to lunch her first day. And I remember I was so impressed when one of the dining staff came over, and she stopped and was taking some time to really ask your mom about what your mom wanted. You know, your mom was it was an emotional day. Right. And
she didn't want to move. We had
to, and whatever. There was a lot of stuff going on, and your mom was like, I can't remember, but it was like, oh, just, give me a salad. But this woman, she was so lovely. Like, what do you tell me exactly what you want, and I'm going to get you.
And I know exactly who you're talking about, and she is fantastic, and she knows. Delightful. Yeah, my mother. When I'm visiting, I'll always bring my mother up to dinner before I leave, and this woman comes up. She knows what my mother wants.
Yep.
She just keeps it into her head, and she is amazing.
Yeah. But again, so I feel like that kind of goes back to some of the things we were talking about earlier. That almost, to me, it's not entirely a soft skill, but it's kind of a soft skill because, I mean, the dining room is serving whatever the dining room is serving in theory, usually with a couple of options. But, if you can sort of make friends and make those connections with people, whatever it is, like business office, yes, obviously good and critical, but all these other things that contribute to the environment that your loved one lives in, those are all really important things. It's hard. It's almost kind of hard to prioritize them to a certain extent.
Make friends and influence people.
I know. That's what I was thinking.
That's exactly what it's all about.
Yep.
So Denise Chadwick Wright, CEO of Birmingham Green Senior Living in Northern Virginia, thank you so much for being on the program. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And before we get into our closing, Jennifer has one more thing to say.
I totally forgot to say at the beginning, because this episode is going to air before the big occasion. So my mom's birthday, Gaggi's birthday, is coming up, and she is going to be 85 years old.
85 years young.
85 years young.
Yes.
You're right, Stephen. You are exactly right,
absolutely
Stephen.
Right.
85 years young. And she definitely, for those of you out there, and I know we have a lot of listeners who do know Gaggi personally, she is definitely 85 years young at heart all day long. Mm-hmm. And of course, then we have a lot of friends who maybe haven't met her, but they definitely know enough about her. And then certainly all of our listeners out there who have
come to know her over the last 2+ years we've been doing the show.
Yep, they know Gaggi. So anyway, please wish her a happy birthday. And if you so choose and wanted to take the time to send us an email or comment on our Facebook page, a voicemail
That's
to
fantastic.
Wish Gaggi happy birthday, that would be amazing.
That would make her so happy, because she does listen to this show.
She does, yes.
All right, so everybody do that. Thanks for listening to this episode. If you want to get in touch with us to, for instance, leave Gaggi a birthday message, you can email us at caregivinggenxstyle@gmail.com. You can send us a text or leave us a voicemail, which in this case would really be the best way to go, and really is always the best way to go. 804-723-1221 is the number to call. We're also on Twitter. The handle is @GenXCaregiving. We're on Blue Sky, also @GenXCaregiving. We're on Facebook. Go into the show notes and you'll find the link for that. That's the best way to get to the page. And I've mentioned it many, many times before. That's where we post the most. So we hope to hear from you soon to say happy birthday to Gaggi. Have a great day.
Good night, everyone.